Welcome to another Pro Football Doc podcast. The season is here, and as we discussed, we don't have any guests during the season because there's so much to cover. But we really do have a special guest this week. It's going to be Carson Wentz. We're going to use Carson Wentz as a little case study to discuss a lot of things, update you on the latest news, breaking news with Carson Wentz, what it means, when he might return, but use this to discuss all the misinformation out there about injuries. And in this case is actually fairly interesting to me. I think, unfortunately, the quote, misinformation, misdirection on injuries doesn't come from Carson himself, just the way things are reported and what teams say about him. Excuse me there. All right, so let's talk about Carson Wentz a little bit. News just broke this morning that the Colts Carson Wentz to have foot surgery out 5 to 12 weeks from according to coach Frank Reich. Now, we talked about this. There was no video, but last Friday at Outkick, I said he's likely to miss start of the regular season with his foot injury and with surgery. And we talk about it, and we even talked about video why. And I think most of those comments are accurate, even though we didn't really have any video to go off of because it's the preseason. It's never going to be perfect. But here's what we try and do here. Let's go to the next link here. We talked about bracing for the news of surgery and recovery and starting the season unavailable at least week 1. And our timeline then is several weeks into the season, maybe over under of even 6 weeks. And I think it seems to be accurate. Carson has proven to be a fast healer, hopefully be under. But this weekend on Sunday, it said, quote, Colts Carson Wentz plans to try rest and rehab his foot injury over the next few days, according to a source, and picking that over immediate surgery. I didn't really buy that. I kind of said no immediate surgery, and I wasn't second guessing, but sometimes surgery is the more conservative thing to do, and talked about my original thoughts. You wait, look, it just didn't make sense. And I talked about it on Sports Grid and elsewhere this morning, where we said, look, it doesn't pass the smell test to say, wait a few days and then get better from surgery, or then have surgery. Bones don't heal in a few days. What is a few days in terms of the soreness going to do for you? So sure enough, indeed, right an hour or two after I said and posted some of that, indeed comes news of the surgery for Carson Wentz. And really, yes, what we do is speculative. I mean, this other doctor, I don't know him. He's an orthopedist, so I respect him. I wasn't there. I didn't see any video, heard a pop, and I know some NFL people, so it's probably a sesamoid fracture and time lost in surgery. Like, yeah, that's kind of what I do. Insider knowledge, not insider information, not sources. And in this case, it was, I won't say 100%, but mostly in the ballpark of right. And I think there are more misinformation to be shared here if you really get after it here. Now, what is being said? A 5 to 12 week timeline. So we talk about this on the timeline a lot, but 5 to 12 weeks, that's the next misinformation that's out there. And this misinformation that's out there not just me saying it. Look at what Coach Mike Vrabel says and does here. I'll play you the video.
Carson Wentz was announced going to have a foot surgery out for the next 5 to 12 weeks. 5 to 12. I know. 5 to 12. You guys play
I like
them
your
in 9
chances
weeks.
of being right.
You guys play them in 9 weeks. How much do you kind of keep an eye on?
Well, that falls right in the middle of it, doesn't it? I don't know. They're going to have whatever they're going to do. Got a lot of respect for Frank and his foot.
Well, suffice it to say, even Coach Vrabel finds that funny, 5-12. But I find a lot of things funny about the 5-12. I mean, what's funny about it, as a doctor, typically you give a timeline that's a little closer in window. Um, and if you really had to be wide, because there's a wide variety, 5-12, why would you say 5-12? Isn't it like 6-12 weeks? Those are more common numbers. The reason why I think you're hearing 5 weeks is the Colts are trying to indicate that he still could be ready to go for the start of the season. I don't believe he will. I think it's a matter of how much time he misses, not if he misses, how much regular season games he misses. I need to over under at 6 weeks. Yeah, I think he might come back at 6 weeks. Could it be a little bit sooner? It might. I certainly hope it's not longer, but he's going to miss several games, I thought, given the bone excision work that is now needed for Carson Wentz. My whole point on this is purely 5-12 weeks just doesn't seem realistic in terms of a timeline. It's more of a cover yourself. It's a wide range, but also it leaves open the possibility of week 1. So what do they say here? It's an old injury, possibly from high school, twinge in his foot, broken bone. And that's interesting. I don't believe at all that the injury was hidden from the Colts. They have access to electronic medical records that the Eagles had. Very hard to hide. If it was a high school injury, heck, the Colts got to look at Carson Wentz at combines. I mean, I don't think that there's anything there because of EMR. I don't think the Eagles hid anything. And if anything, if the Eagles were hiding something, they didn't negotiate a very trade, because if he doesn't play 75% of the time, it's a second round pick. He needs to play 75% of the snaps or 70% of the snaps, and the Colts make the playoffs in order to get that first round pick. Now, 75% of a 16 game season, you do the math, 5 games, and it's down to a second round pick. So in the end, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist, if Carson Wentz is close to ready to go week 4, maybe week 5, does he get held until week 6? Then he won't. It's only a second round pick, especially if it's a judgment call. So some interesting things coming out of this overall related to Carson Wentz. And I also wanted to address a few things related to Carson Wentz. First of all, rest of this article, the Colts, remember I said misinformation? The Colts knew what they were going to do already. Well, the Colts met with multiple doctors, see what the process was. And all parties agreed surgery was the way to go. So it was never really a wait and see approach. That's what got put out there. This is why, I mean, teams aren't dumb. They know what's happening. Surgery is often the least risky thing to do, the more conservative thing to do. And that's what they're Carson Wentz. And hopefully returns. But let me address a few things. I do not believe Carson Wentz is injury prone. I don't like that label. If anything, I think Carson is shown to his potential own detriment to be very tough and wanting to play through injuries, and perhaps then creating more injuries because of that own worst enemy stuff. I am not being critical of Carson. I'm being supportive of Carson. I know a lot of you out there, I see it on Twitter timeline. He's always hurt. He's terrible, this, that, the other, can't finish the season. I don't know if that's fair. You got to understand, if you go back to his injury history, when he played against the Rams in the LA Coliseum, he tore his left knee ACL and LCL, yet finished the run and scored and finished the run. He stayed in the game a couple plays before coming out of the game with a multi-ligament injury. So there's credit to toughness right there. The initial report was only an ACL, and he was pigeonholed into an early return. but it's become subsequently clear it was multi-ligament, ACL and LCL, like I've been saying all along. And with that, I think that he didn't get enough credit for how quickly he recovered after that multi-ligament injury. I think he played week 3. I knew he wouldn't play week 1. I thought he wouldn't play till week 6 or longer. He played at week 3. So once again, he recovered quickly. Then that year, he developed a stress fracture, or low back injury. And I think everyone thought he was injury prone because here he goes again. He didn't finish the season. But that might have been because he played through the injury. Look, my theory, I don't have it in fact, is that if you have a bad left knee and you aren't stepping into throws, you might arch your back a little more, thereby aggravating the stress fracture that he had previously in his career, I believe in high school or something. So this may be something that was pre-existing. And by reports that year, he toughed it out and maybe made it worse. And it probably didn't help his cause that there was the weekly, will he play or won't he play? And those of you that follow me I said, he's not returning this season, period. Yet there was the weekly Doug Peterson, will he or won't he play? And it almost gave the false impression that he was soft, not wanting to play, when it was predetermined that there's no way that he could play. And I think that was bad messaging that leads to the Carson Wentz injury-prone analogy here. And now with this foot issue, I mean, look, it's a completely different issue. So I think it's too much to say that he's injury prone. He's had bad luck, no question. He's had significant injuries, no question. But there's no reason for me to call him injury prone. If anything, he's been tough. All right, so what wrap up part 1 of the Pro Football Doc podcast. And essentially what we're talking about is the Carson Wentz news. I don't believe with the bone excision, some of our theories were correct. He wasn't going to wait for surgery. He will not be, in my opinion, ready for week 1. If he tries to play week 1, he won't be as mobile, won't be 100%. I think it's smarter for him to wait. I think October is when Carson will return. Is it the first week of October or late October? That's the other big news, that I think he's out until October, but he will be back in October. When in October, we don't know. They didn't hide anything. And, it may convert a second-round pick, not a first-round pick at this point in time. And no, I do not believe Carson Wentz is injury prone. If anything, I think he's tough and might be his own worst enemy. All right, so thanks for bearing with me the first part of this Pro Football Doc podcast. We'll take a break and we'll come back for part 2, where we do a little bit of a rundown here. Thanks for watching.